We are so grateful that you all are spending this next bit of time with us. We are hungry for connection right now and always, and thinking through the lens of Breathe, the sense that we belong to something that we're all trying to figure out together has never been more important than it is right now. These meetings that we're doing, the one we did yesterday, the one we're doing today, are sort of a taste into opportunities for us to connect with other people in ways that some of us have been doing for a while now, but in ways that have suddenly become so much more important. And I've got a few things just that I want to cover before we get to the next part. One is that this is a meeting where we'll go over a lot of different pieces of information, and we'll even show you a document that many of you received yesterday. You'll have time to look that over, to try things out, to mess stuff up, and to get back in touch with us. It's really just a low barrier, low stress opportunity to think about connection. The second piece is that a lot of things we're doing right now differently than the world before are about sharing content and programming and all those things with the rest of the world. But we think it's really important to let you know that the content will all still be there, and the connection is really what's most important. So anything you can do to be comfortable with this platform that lets you reach out to people that might otherwise be feeling very much alone right now, the content will come. We'll find new ways to make it happen, but the connection is really, truly the most important thing. And the last thing I want to mention now at this beginning is that everything that Mark and I have been writing about in the document that you have seen or will see, and we'll be sharing our screen with you in a moment, so you'll get to see the most updated. Two things you need to know about that document. One is that it's still a very much a live document, and after this sharing that we have with each other, you may have some great ideas about how to make it a better document. Please send that to us. We're working with marketing to make it a finished, whatever that means, and design approved PDF that we can share also with the field, but it won't be any of those things unless you share with us any kinds of edits or corrections or things we can include to make it the best thing it could possibly be. And the second thing is that everything we've written about in those documents, we're also trying to model right now with you all in this, our first official Zoom meeting, while we talk about how to be engaging and how to build resilient relationships through this medium. So in that path, or along those lines, one of the first tools that we'd like to share with you is an opportunity not only to gather like this as one full group, but also to break out into smaller groups where we're able to really talk to each other one-on-one. Many of you have your cameras on and your mics on, and you may want to put them on because this is much less of a frontal opportunity here than a chance to really connect each of us with other people. And in a tool that is called Breakout Sessions, Mark has been secretly putting together small groups that we will push a magic button and allow you to go be with for the next 5 minutes. Even when you moved your cursor, you may not see something at the bottom of your screen that says Breakout Sessions, because Mark is actually the host of this meeting right now and it's only on his screen. But he's been able to put us in small groups. He's going to push a magic button that's going to allow us to all go into those small groups. Hi, Amy. And in those small groups, I want you to think a little bit about this prompt, and it comes from one of the lenses, and it's the lens of Kedusha, because I really do feel that even though we're in the midst of such tumultuous and trying times, this really could be thought of as an entrance to a place that is holy and a place that is calm and a place that provides connection. And so I'm just going to read this one line. Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. So as you go into your small breakout session right now, you're going to just share a moment of connection, a moment of calm, a moment of holiness in the midst of all of this chaos that really brought you to a centered place with the people that you're talking with. And as Mark pushes the button, there will be a button on the bottom of your screen that says join your breakout session. And then in 5 minutes, Mark will call you back and you can wait until the Zoom screen actually brings you back. Or if you're done talking, you're welcome to come as soon as you see that, Mark. But for right now, no one will be lost. No one will be harmed. Just enjoy some quiet, small group conversation and connection. You ready, Mark?
I am. I have a question. I see Amy on kind of twice. I don't know if one of them's Erin. So when I put to the rooms, if anyone is by themselves or some of you might be in a group of 3, Kathy, don't join your room.
Right.
Let me know. Kathy and I are going to stay here in the main room. So take 5 minutes.
All right. I've been having a lot of tech issues, so I keep having to call into Zoom calls on both my computer and my phone. I'll change the name on the one not to
No,
use.
it's cool. I think I already did that. And you're also able to rename who you are. Some of you came in as JCC Association. I renamed you just for the simple purpose of knowing who you are. But we'll go over those tips and tools in a minute. I'm going to break you out. You'll have 5 minutes. See you in a bit.
Here comes the button. Go ahead and join your breakout room. Great.
Yeah.
And hit record or pause. See, no one was harmed in the small groups. We're all back just like that. And before we move on, there's Jordan's. There you are.
Abby.
Hi, Abby.
You, Abby.
Abby, everybody.
Anybody want? It would be great just to hear from a couple of you before we put you on mute again. Just what was interesting about that? Did you find some solace? It doesn't need to be what you said, or just about the experience. Can you share a little bit? Somebody.
I thought it was very user-friendly.
Yeah, agree.
I loved my connection partner. No, it was very user-friendly, and I didn't think as the person on the receiving end of being put into a breakout group or being put back into the main group that I had to do anything complicated. And I didn't get fluffed or fluxed.
Great, great. Anybody else?
It was fascinating to find out what's going on in Israel. I don't know if Sarah wants to share that, but it's much more stringent than it is here.
Well, I do think that we need more time, and Mark and I are making more time for everybody to be sharing their own experiences in a different kind of setting. The only reason that it's killing me because I'd love to hear more about that. But I also am really aware that we don't have a lot of time with you at this moment. But I do want to say that we are looking, Sarah and all of you, for opportunities that are not programmed for us to get together on a regular basis and just share what each of us is seeing from our views. So please hold on to that. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just 2 things. One is that I think that this is a really important point for all those Zoom conversations that are going to be having over the next 2 days and over the next weeks, that we may be eager to talk about program, but we may need to say to people, let's have 2 sessions, one to vent a little bit and one for the programming. But what we have to be really careful about with the venting is not to raise the stress level by venting.
Exactly.
And we can talk about that separately, about some techniques that we need to think about in order for those people leading those sessions to create the venting into positive supportive venting. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I had actually mentioned this to Sue, but I had a conversation with somebody in the field who said, from a very small JCC with no IT person and everything, who really wants a training session about how to use Zoom with their staff and how to use it as a tool. So, you know, you have the big JCCs that are up and running with it and fantastic, but there are some very small JCCs and people who just don't know how to do a breakout session, don't know how to share a screen. So we maybe need to think about having a Zoom to teach how to Zoom.
Exactly. And I think that's already on our list. This is first happening for our staff. And then I believe Mark and I are taking it on the road without going on the road, both with the document and with the actual Zoom. So thank you for that. And I want to remind you, because part of this, as I said, is about removing the curtain and letting you see everything we're doing in this meeting, which is a model for your meetings. I started you off in your small groups with a lens that was helping you really try to focus on something that was lifting you, something that was really giving you calm. It's definitely one of the tools that we use all the time to get people started in a direction that's not going to sort of fall with gravity to the lowest common denominator. So thank you for both of those comments. And without further ado, at this moment, because
just before we get muted, I wanted to let you know that I have been stealing from everyone who has been creating materials and reaching out to listservs I just sent the resilience piece as part of resources to the adult directors, and I copied something that I saw in Joy's HR group, who said that we're going to start our time together thinking about something we have seen or heard or felt that brought us calm in the last 24 hours. I thought that was the right tone to set. I don't know if anyone will show up for the call, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what we're all doing, right? We're borrowing, we're stealing, and that's exactly why we're sharing. So Mark, I love this resilience document that's up, which is what Andy was just talking about. And now, in a moment, Mark will share the other document that is from from this conversation and just start to walk us through.
Before I do that, just for your viewing preference, you might be in speaker view right now. You might be in gallery view right now. If it's gallery view, it looks like the Brady Bunch. If it's speaker view, then I'm probably the center on your screen. Oddly, if you're in gallery view, if you go up to the top right, it says speaker view, but that actually means go to speaker view. And for me, it's Steve, because he's the last person, I guess, that is made a noise before I did, but for the rest of you, it's me. And then some of you are at the top and you can scroll, or you can go to gallery view. So just two things that you can choose how you want to experience the Zoom. Also, a neat little trick, if you go to your specific screen where you see yourself, you go to the ellipsis next to mute, you can hide your self view. I don't know about you, but when I'm in person, I actually don't see myself. And now that I see myself on Zoom, it is kind of distracting. So I just hid my self view. You can still see me, but I can't see me. And if it's helpful for you not to see yourself, then by all means do it. If it's helpful for you to see yourself, or if you have multiple people in the room, you can do that too, just for your viewing pleasure. The other thing, if you open up the participants, you probably have a participants at the bottom of your screen, the menu, that lists everyone who is here. It might be a little different for me as a host, but you can rename yourself. Some of you came in as JCC and association, so I renamed you just so I knew what person was. But if you want to do a fun icebreaker and say, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? I can put, mint chocolate chip, right? And just, obviously that makes confusing because now I'm referred to as mint chocolate chip, but it's just one way to just change it up, make it different. It's like putting on a name tag, and be creative with the name tags like we often are at our things. So I'm going to hold on answering the rest of the questions, but just because Randy, you just asked, how do you stop seeing yourself?
Yeah, I missed it.
Yeah, go to the top right of your box. And then there's a little ellipsis, and if you go down, you can see a hide self view. And then if you read yourself to see yourself again, go back to that, and it says show self view. So,
but how do you go back if you're not there?
I'll go to the top right, right where it says speaker view. It'll say show self view, and you click.
Oh,
on
I
it,
see.
you can see yourself.
It's like a metaphor, really. I don't want to see myself right now.
So Mark, mine's not showing. Sorry, this is Yael. Of course, you can see me. I can't see myself. I'm sorry. Mine's not saying re-show self.
If you go to the top,
right
where it says speaker view,
yeah.
There's also to the left, it should say show self view. It doesn't say that?
No.
All right, so hold on that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I know what I look like. It's fine.
Right. Well, I mean, it just actually. Is it? How about now? Oh, no, that's me. All right, I'm going to move on because I do want to be done by 1 o'clock. And
perfect.
A good educational perspective. Sam, very quickly, sure. Sam Cohen.
No, it's not a share. I have a question. At the beginning of the call, you asked us to mute ourselves. Is that a better practice than muting everyone automatically? And if we mute everyone automatically, are they able to then unmute themselves at the point in the call where they need to speak?
It's a very good question. Actually, when you set up a Zoom, which I think could be for another call, if you go on Zoom US, you can, Zoom.us in your account, you can specify, do you want people to be muted when they come in, or do you want to ask people to mute, or either way. If you have people muted when they come in, they should be able to unmute themselves unless you do an advanced specific that they can't.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
And in terms of preference, I think it depends on how many people are on the call. We have 10 people here, you have autonomy. If there's 50 people, then you may want to have a little bit more control.
Got it.
So I'm going to jump ahead to sharing my screen, which is at the bottom. Whether you're a participant or a host, most times you set it so anyone can share their screen, which is nice if they want to share something as if they were in person. So I'm going to share This is document. Okay, do you see the tools and tips document? Great, yes, I see hands up. Okay, so this is the latest version of it. I have to rename it because it says tools and tips, which say tools and tips. I'm not gonna read it word for word because actually a best practice is for you to have a nice visual or a PowerPoint. This is not modeling best practice, but the goal here is just look at the bold and I'll talk about each piece and then we'll send you the updated version of this document. You have something very similar already in your inboxes. So I'm gonna speak for 5 minutes about a topic, then I'll shoot it to Kathy, back to me, back to Kathy, and we hope to have at least a few minutes for questions. So setting up participants for a positive online experience, I would check with your participants first to make sure that they have the proper technology, especially because folks are primarily working from home now, or maybe perhaps exclusively. Check in with all of them. Do they have strong internet or reliable Wi-Fi? Do they have a webcam? Do they have speakers that have clear audio? Make sure they have a strong microphone, make sure they have headphones. Double check with them and maybe say, hey, I'm not sure, can we hop on a Zoom very quickly for 5 minutes and just test it? That way you take care of that beforehand. If you've ever seen the YouTube video of like the Zoom call where everyone's in person, but Zoom, I'll send it to you, where you can't hear everybody or everyone looks weird, get out of that away ahead of time. That way when you join, everyone's already set with proper technology. The second, create a disruption or distraction-free environment. As if you were in a classroom or in a conference room where the doors are closed and everyone is hopefully fully present. Encourage folks signing on to take off all the other apps and programs on their computer. Make sure that the doors are closed, that they're in a quiet environment, that they have proper natural light, but they're not otherwise distracted. Obviously, this is an honor code, but if you encourage for them to have a distraction-free environment, you're that much more likely for them to have it as well. And make sure that they're on mute when they don't have to be speaking, because then you don't hear background noise, etc. Going back to proper tech, sometimes people just don't have strong audio, but they can call for the audio from their phone, and encourage them to do that. And when they do that, make sure that they don't just put in the meeting ID, but the participant ID. So Stephen Becker video is connected to Stephen Becker audio. And when Stephen Becker speaks on audio, you don't just see a phone as opposed to his face or a phone icon. So just a couple things to keep in mind for there. So just one screen per person. This is probably going to be happening anyway with social distancing, but you may often have had a Zoom where 2 people from the same JCC are on the call and they're just sharing a laptop. It's preferable to have them on separate screens, even in separate offices, even if they're in the same building, because then they have the same individualized experience as everyone else on the call does. And it creates kind of a level playing field, and they're able to do separate breakout groups and not have to do it together. Send plans in advance. We didn't do that this time. Obviously, we put this together pretty quickly, although we kind of did do it because you had the chance to see this document ahead of time. Oftentimes being on Zoom, especially for folks that are not frequently using it, can feel awkward, can feel odd. It's why people don't immediately raise their hands when you ask a question, but they do in person. It's just an odd medium for a lot of people. If you send them the plans in advance, this is what our agenda is. This is how I'm going to go through, the hour, the 45 minutes. This is how much time it is. We're going to talk a little more about that in a second. It creates, curiosity, interest, and reduces the awkwardness. When there's more knowns, people feel more excited and less worried. And then rehearse before the show. Maybe you guys are the opening night, and our team yesterday was the dress rehearsal, because Kathy and I really got to practice how the 45 minutes went, what worked, what didn't work, what did we spend too much time on. I would encourage you, before you have a Zoom with 50 people, if you can, that do it with your team or do it with a couple other people, do a dry run and say, that was too long, that flow didn't work well. That way you're that much more prepared when you're, in front of or dialoguing or facilitating for a bunch of people. The last thing that I'll say before I'll push it over to Kathy is really have people get to know the tech on a pre-call, different from ensuring that they have proper technology, whether it's a separate Zoom call altogether, a la what Sarah was saying, or you dedicate the first 20 minutes of the first call just for people to practice muting and unmuting, just for people to practice turning on and turning off your video. If my 4-year-old son walks in, which is quite possible, I might turn off my video so, you don't have to see him go crazy, although he's very cute. But you can turn on and turn turn off your video at any point. Gallery view, speaker view, how to chat. Just right now, I'm sharing my screen. I'll stop it for a quick second, but there's a wonderful chat function here. If you click on chat at the bottom, you can have conversations with people, either with everybody or just with individuals, that is actually, I think, added value, not just distracting. So just have people be able to use the chat. Kathy will talk a little bit more how you can use it in a second. Randy, I see your raised hand. That's another great function. Hold on to your question if that's okay. I'm going to share the screen one more time. And then just have them people able to change, adding or changing their name, how we talked about before, and if they have to use the audio portion by the phone as opposed to the computer. I'm going to pass it over to Kathy. Hold your questions. We'll get to them soon. Kathy, go.
Exactly. Thank you. So now we're making use of the tools Zoom has to offer. We really suggest this. No meeting should be fully frontal learning, and especially now, to Sarah's point, we've got to make sure that there's room for interaction, not only because there will be engagement and because people so badly need to connect with each other, but also because there is an old rule that the one thing you will really remember from a meeting is that thing that you said. So you need to make sure you're not the only one talking, even if it's pearls of wisdom coming out of your mouth, as is happening for me and all of you right now. So we're going to talk about a couple of the cool tools that are really rather magical that you can play with. Some of them are way ahead of where you want to be right now, but we want you to know, and Mark is going to be modeling them for us as we move ahead. The first would be using the whiteboard. There is a feature, and if you don't see it on the bottom of your screen now, it's because you're not the host, and that is going to be true of a couple of these. But it is a whiteboard that we know for sure you can use to make incredibly wonderful pictures, as Mark is going to do for you right now. Wonderful pictures that are artistic, things that you're going to want him to sign later, things that you're really going to make a few bucks selling on the black market when all this is done, like the one he's modeling now. There are higher tech versions where other people can also write on the whiteboard. We're learning how to do that, but at the moment, all you need to know is that Mark is really good at this, and you too could be good at this if you practice and decide that you're going to dive in. So thank you very much for the whiteboard. Now we're going on to sharing screen. Now it's hard to see that because Mark has been sharing his screen, but everybody, whether you are the person who is the host or a participant, should be seeing, and if you don't see it, move your cursor and then you'll see it, a green box at the end of your screen, at the bottom of your screen, that says share. And when you push that, you're going to be given an opportunity to share your desktop or share an attachment that you've already downloaded on your computer. It's always good to check with the people that are watching to make sure they're looking at what you want them to look at. But it's a great thing to know that anybody can share a screen. And if somebody has something they want to share, or if they want to even be keeping notes of the meeting and not use the whiteboard function, that's a really important thing to do. The chat, as we discussed a moment ago, is next to that share. I'm going to actually pose a question at the moment, which basically says, what time is it now? I don't even know, and I haven't done that. What did you last eat? How about that? And then, because I printed it to everyone, you can now type in the last delicious thing. If it was something really healthful like Doritos, if it was something important that you need to share with us, you can also lie. No one will know, though we don't condone that behavior. But if you have an opportunity during your meeting to send out a question and you want everyone to write it, not in a way that will interrupt what's happening, but in a way to really enhance it. I'm also going to let you know that I just got an interesting message on my screen, which you could take as personal, but I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity. And it said that I was unstable. And I want you to know that that doesn't mean that I am unstable, or I guess I should say any more unstable than I really usually am. But it does mean that you might be having a connection for a moment. And it could be because my husband and the rest of our neighborhood is suddenly using Wi-Fi when in New Hampshire it was just invented yesterday. So it could be that we're just having a little moment, in which case you breathe through it and then everything comes back. It also might be that you go out of the meeting and then come back into the meeting and not freak out. That's just something to be important to share. Going on with the other pieces that I have at my disposal here, we use the breakout rooms. Again, that's something that Thank you, Amy. One more thing about the chats. I'm sorry. I love that this is to everyone. And I want you to also know that if you send a message to just one person, you can click on that green, on that minus blue, to send a chat just to one person if you'd like to. Like saying, can you please, I don't know what, make sure that your window is closed, it's hard to see you, or something like that. That might be something that you might want to send to just one person. So that is the chat function. The breakout room we already used, and I really have to tell you, it's one of the most powerful things I use on any of my Zooms. We do not need to be a group of 10 or 50 or any of those things. We can truly have meaningful conversations and private conversations. And once you practice, it will help.
Creating the breakout rooms is very simple. It's not magic. You click breakout rooms, they'll do it automatically, and they'll ask you, do you want to have 10 people in 5 rooms or 2 people in 10 rooms? And you can, once they do it automatically, you can then move people around so you can have the right partners, and you can even do that ahead of time as soon as people sign on. But also add that if you have 2 people, someone emceeing or facilitating and someone doing tech, kind of the way Kathy and I are doing it and bouncing back and forth, that helps as opposed to you having to juggle both roles.
Exactly. So I'm going to move really quickly here because I am looking at time, and I know I have a meeting, and many of you do on the hour. But the last 2 here, or 3 here, are creating a poll that's a little bit more in depth and the kind of thing that we might do in a follow-up meeting. But you can ask a question, you can have that ready ahead of time. People can vote on the poll, and you can be able to see how things are. Or as Randy was showing us, you can raise your hand if you look under, what is that, in participants, I think, and find a way there to let somebody know that you have something to say. Creating your virtual background is also super fun. You could be there in the middle of the pyramids or with the Bay Bridge behind you, or even in outer space. But that again is for those that are brave enough to go there. And recording, which is something we're doing now, there he goes, is a really important thing for us to know about, because we want to share this with other people and make good use of our time. But also to know that if it is being recorded, you're wanting to make sure that it lives somewhere that people can access, and that everything you in fact recorded, you wanted to record. For instance, when we put you in breakout rooms, Mark and I had a few moments where we were just debriefing between ourselves. We paused the recording during that time so that when you came back from your breakout session, we pushed record again, and that way it wasn't dead space on the recording that you share with others. Troubleshooting here, it basically says some of the things I'm talking about you can't see because you're not the host, but if you need to troubleshoot, both Zoom.us and Mark and I are available to help in any way when you come up with those questions. Mark, take it away.
I just want to acknowledge we're really rushing through this. So if you want to take a little more time to practice, because that's sometimes the best way that we learn, Kathy and I will happily spend some time with each of you individually. Or if you have your first Zoom call and you're like, I could have done that better, then we'll happily do that. Sam and Randy, just hold on to your questions for just another minute. The next piece, planning and executing a compelling Zoom experience. I think these are educational tools that we would want to do even if we're in person, but perhaps more important on Zoom, given the importance to keep people engaged. The first is have an opening ritual, especially if it's a group that gets together regularly, like a Marin or a J Response or a JCC Maccabi cohort or a Sheva Learning Community. What's something that you can do the first 5 to 10 minutes, every first 5 to 10 minutes, that gets people speaking? As Kathy said, they're going to remember what they said more than what they heard. So if there's a way for everyone to speak within the first 10 minutes, what's one thing you're feeling right now? Let's do a group cheer, whatever works for your specific group and your culture. Have that opening ritual. People look forward to it. People get excited about it. And then they're more focused for the learning going forward. The next piece, whatever presentation you do that might be frontal, that is someone is speaking, someone is showing a PowerPoint, very, very helpful if they have some type of visual, and it's not just them speaking, but give your participants something to do. Say, we're going to be first tell them how long the frontal is going to be. This is going to be 10 minutes of giving you information, but we would like you to make sure that you write down 5 things that you heard that you've never heard before, or write down 3 questions that you're going to want to ask when we get to that portion. That way you're giving them something that helps them pay attention and not be distracted, because it is harder to focus, looking at a screen than in person. So making sure your frontal presentation is never always completely frontal. And you can even give them a fun, activity of like, during this presentation, try to find like the 4 times we say this word, make it a scavenger hunt is always fun as well. Just like an opening ritual, have a closing ritual too. Sometimes that's even more important, and especially now during these times, giving them an opportunity to say, you know, what's one word you're thinking and feeling right now, given what we're experiencing, but also given that we've had this, you know, special hour or so together. Oh, I like how Jane Herman really updated this document, Kathy. She moved things around, but I agree with how she did it.
I do too. I do too.
Time frames. If you have a 45-minute session or a 90-minute session, it should not be, and I feel very strongly about this, 80% one mode. It needs to be mixed to keep people involved and engaged, and they should be moving around really or actually or metaphorically every 15 to 10 minutes or so. So I created the 15, 20%, 30%, 20%, 15% rule. You can change this up as you'd like, but think about if you have a 90-minute call, which is long for a Zoom, what can you do in the first 15 minutes, the first 15%, the first 10 or 12 minutes? Maybe that's your opening ritual. Maybe that's an initial breakout conversation, what have you. If you're going to do a presentation, some kind of formal or frontal learning, giving of information, I really encourage you to have it be no more than 20% of your call, which is 18 minutes of a 90. You can maybe squeeze that to 30%, but I actually think it should be short. And the second bullet point and the third could be switched. You can have an activity first and then presentation, so they're really engaged in the content, or you can have them, you know, engage in something for 10 to 15 minutes and then do a group activity or discussion, and you can use breakouts for there. Here's your scenario. Talk about this for, you know, in groups of 4 for 20 minutes, and then come back and do a group presentation and discussion and reflection on the experience. I always like to say that an experience is just an experience, but if you give them time to reflect, then they're going to learn, the learning's going to stick, they're going to be more engaged. And then make sure you budget that last 15% to not only have a closing ritual, but what are the next steps? What's our next Zoom call? What are the announcements? And really budget it out. If you send them an agenda ahead of time of this is what's going to happen, they'll hold you accountable to it, and you'll hold yourself accountable to it as well. Again, use this as is helpful to you. Let me throw it back to Kathy for the last piece, and then we'll open it up to questions. I know only 5
So you
minutes.
can read here about food and surprises, artifacts, really understanding, and I love this part that Mark had added about beginning with the end in mind and making sure that you're thinking about what your goal is in the end before you plan your meeting. I want to just add 2 things that aren't necessarily in here written and give you time to read those things on your own. And they have to do a little bit with what Mark was just saying. It's also okay to use silence as a tool right now. And I think that when silence and when we're all together is a really important thing. I've had a few meetings the last few days where people can keep their camera on or just move it to the video screen that says what their name is and spend maybe 5 minutes writing and then put their screen back on and share. It's really okay to help people manage this time, even when we're in a meeting together. You don't have to feel like this time needs to be filled to the brim with speaking. And in fact, it's better if it isn't. And even though that sounds odd coming from me. And finally, with all of these Zoom meetings where we are back to back Zooming these days, it's up to those of us to use Zoom responsibly and make sure that you maybe make time, even if it's a 50-minute meeting, for 10 minutes to be off screen, going and using the bathroom, taking a break and letting all your participants have a moment for their next meeting. We're not modeling that so well now, but we did make this 45. We have a few moments for questions here, and please know that even virtually, we're available for questions. Mark, you want to manage the questions and call?
Yeah, so I saw Randy and then Sam and then Sarah, so let's go in that order. Randy.
I just was playing around with the thing at the bottom of the screen that said raise hand because I didn't know we could do that and decided to click it to see what would happen. What does the presenter see when somebody in the house raises their hand? What do you see?
Good question. So I see it both in your box. There's a hand raised that I can then lower. And if I went to participants, then that's where I can see the raised hand. I often forget it because the host doesn't have a chance to raise their hand.
I see.
And if you're in a large group of like 30 people, it's not always necessarily easy to see whose hand is raised on the participant side. I think Zoom really just updated to make sure that I can see the hand raised and lowered. So see how that works. Sometimes it might be easier for people to put something in the chat and then respond.
Right.
There. But it's another great tool depending on the size of your group. Sam.
Okay, so firstly, thank you, because this has been hugely helpful. So my first question is, is there a plan to create a training like this that we can invite our cohorts to, because we're trying to offer support to the field, and I actually think this would be an area that would be, especially for supervisors, would be super helpful. I'm thinking selfishly about the assistant exec and COO track, but I imagine that's the same for a lot of tracks. So just wondering if we want to consider in the next few days, once this is fine-tuned, offering that. You both are fantastic presenters, and I know I'm looking for content, and this would be perfect. So question or comment. The second thing is, I just want to clarify about the breakout. So I understand there's an option to either randomly do the breakouts based on whatever formula you put in, or to pre-assign them. Is there a in-between, which is, let's say I know that I'm not quite sure how many people are going to come on the call, but I do know that these 4 people are going to come on the call, and I want them to kind of be like the facilitator in the breakout room. Is there a way to assign them as facilitators, but then let everyone else be assigned randomly, because we won't know until right then and there who's actually on the call? So like, let's say Mark, Kathy and Jordan are my 3 facilitators. I know they're coming on the call. They've pre-agreed to lead a breakout room just to make sure it keeps going.
Right.
But I don't know who the other 20 people are or 10 people are that are going to be on the call. In the moment, can I pre-assign you 3 as the facilitator, and then?
So to your first question, we're definitely going to be sending out this document to the field, and I think Kathy and I would be happy to do these Zoom trainings. Let's talk about how and when we can do that. But I agree, if we can make that happen, we will, sooner rather than later. To the breakouts, I think the best way to do it is to create it randomly once everyone is on. That way you know who's actually on, and then move the people that you wanted to be facilitators and make sure they're all in separate rooms.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think I agree with that. One more piece that I just want to say, so it doesn't trip you up when you're in the moment. Some people, let's use Amy as an example, Amy and Aaron, who are here, really, it's only Amy, right? But she needed to have Zoom capability, and she also needed to be able to connect because there were tech issues. When you break out, you're going to want to make sure that sometimes there are 2 screens for the same person, like this. You're going to want to put them, and it'll be so much easier when you're the host and you can see it. So I suggest practicing in the same group so that they can be seen and heard in the same group. And one other piece is that it's really helpful if the host stays in the main room. That means you don't go to one of the breakout sessions, because some people, like Jordan, might join after you're in smaller groups. And if it's early, you can move them to a breakout session. And if it's not, you can just chat with them in the main room. So it just makes it, you not feel like you're trying to manage too much at once.
So Sarah had her hand up, and then Stephen and Randy. It's 101. Kathy and I will stay on, or at least
Yes.
I can stay on.
I can stay on. I'm letting them know I'll be
Completely
there.
understand, and thank you for your time too, Sarah.